Hi, I'm Dean DeMarzo here on Longest Solo Ever, and this is an introduction to mixing music and audio. We're going to take a look at some very basic mixing techniques and see why mixing is one of the most important steps of the music production process. That's all coming up right now on Longest Solo Ever. So we are here in Pro Tools. This is my music production software of choice for editing and mixing audio. But there are a lot of great other options on the market like Reaper, Cubase, Logic. The list goes on. So use whatever you're comfortable with. We have a little song here I recorded earlier this week. It's got a few parts here. A full drum kit right here, a bass guitar, a couple clean guitar parts, a couple distorted guitar parts, a piano, and a lead guitar. So let's take a little listen to each of these parts to see what's going on before we even mix anything. Here's this, kind of clean verse part. Okay, so a nice calm rhythm part. And here's the distorted chorus. So right away, you can tell this is not a well-balanced track, right? And that makes sense because I haven't even touched a fader or a pan knob yet. But take a listen real quick. We have way too much of this roomy, sounds like the drum kit's playing in a big concert hall somewhere and we're 200 feet away in the back. It's not a clean, clear, crisp drum sound. And in the chorus, the piano completely overpowers everything else. So clearly we have a lot of work to do before we get this sounding like an actual song. The first thing I want to take a look at is Pro Tools Mix Window. Now, if you're using another piece of software, don't worry, your mix window will look a lot like this. Just about every DAW models their mix window on a real mixing board. So all the concepts should transfer over no matter what piece of software you're using. So the mix window can look really daunting and scary at first, just like a real mixing board. All these knobs and faders on it. How could you possibly know where to start? But really, if you look closely, it's pretty organized, and it's mostly just a couple pieces repeating over and over. You see we have each of these pieces organized in kind of a column, and each one of those columns is a track or a channel. Each track represents just one sound source. Now, a sound source could be just one instrument, or it could be just one microphone on that instrument. For example, we have just one track for the bass guitar, because I just plugged that in directly to the computer and recorded that on its own. On the other hand, the drums have 10 tracks devoted to them. One for the kick, the top microphone on the snare, a microphone on the bottom of the snare underside, the first tom, the second tom, the third tom, a spot mic on the hi-hat, a spot mic on the ride cymbal, and then a stereo pair of microphones overhead of the drum set, as well as a stereo pair of microphones in the room far away from the drum set. And we're going to use all of these to build our drum sound. So you can see how all these tracks can represent either a single instrument or part of a larger group of tracks representing a single instrument. Now, on each of these tracks, we have a few parts, and we're going to focus in this area right now. This is some Pro Tools specific routing stuff you don't need to worry about. But down here, the first thing you should notice is the volume fader. Now what the volume fader does is, as its name suggests, it adjusts the volume of that track. So let's take a quick listen to our kick drum mic. And I can make it louder or softer. That's all that does. It's nice and simple. Now you'll notice I just clicked this S button. If I hover over that, you'll see that stands for solo, which means I only want to listen to this track. And as soon as I clicked that, all we heard was the kick drum, right? Here's without the solo button. So this lets you zero in on a single track, just see what's going on there and make your adjustments before moving out to the full mix. And that works on every track, of course. We can just listen to the hi-hat part. All right. The M, as you might imagine, stands for mute. So I can use that to stop the sound of a track I don't want to hear. So instead of soloing the kick, or say I just want to hear the drums, I could either solo all these tracks, or my other option is I can select everything that's not the drums and mute those. So that's useful as well for making sure you just want to hear the things you want to hear. Above that is the pan knob. So the pan knob is responsible for where the sound is occurring. Is it right in the center of your ears? Is it only coming out of the left speaker or earphone? Or is it only coming out of the right speaker or earphone? And we have control over everything in between. So just take a listen as I pan, let's say, the clean guitar around left and right. So you heard that move to the left, back to the right, and then back to the center eventually. If you're listening on a computer or TV or phone with only one speaker, then you heard nothing there, and I'm very sorry, but you get the concept. So we are going to use just those two items today, the volume fader and the pan knob, to get a great sound out of this mix. We're not going to need any crazy effects or plugins or anything. Just by using our ears, volume faders, and pan knobs, we're going to get a solid mix out of this. So let's get started. Let's take a quick listen to just the drum set and see what each of these sounds like. Here's our kick drum, as we heard before. Our top snare. Now this is a microphone pointed at just the top of a snare drum, which is going to be a very different sound from the bottom of a snare drum, as you'll hear. We're going to use both of these to build our snare sound. Okay. Here's the bottom snare drum. Listen to how different this sounds. Now, if you've ever seen a physical snare drum in person, you know the underside has these snare wires running across it. So that's what we're hearing rattle as we hit the drum. So we're going to use that to kind of build some sizzle into our drum sound and get a nice clear snare drum. We've got some toms. Let me see where those toms are actually occurring in the edit window. Right there, it looks like. So here are our toms. Okay, nice clear tom hits. Here's our hi-hat. And that is a microphone up close on the hi-hat. We have some ride cymbal later in the song. We switch from the hi-hat to the ride. There it is. Next, we have the overheads, which are the most important part of the drum set, in my opinion. It's a pair of condenser microphones, usually placed over top of the drum set, capturing the sound of the whole kit. And you can hear we have a little bit of everything in there. Some kick, snare, and a lot of cymbals. This is where most of our cymbal sound is going to come from. All right. And finally, we have the room mic. Now, this is a single microphone or a pair of microphones placed pretty much as far away from the drum kit as you can get it. And we want to get kind of a like a weird, big, open sound that we're going to use just a little of to make our drums sound huge. So you can hear that sounds weird on its own. You know, you could use it for an effect or something, but on its own, it's not going to be a great fundamental drum sound. So we're just going to use a little bit of that. So I'm going to mute up the rest of our tracks here that aren't the drums. And I think it's pretty clear our major problem in this is that there's way too much room mic right now. So listen to how much that immediately cleared up the drum sound, right? Here's what we had. And as we pull that room mic out, it's immediately clearer, right? Now, before we go any further with this, I actually want to start panning some of these drums because a drum set doesn't occur in just one place. It's a really wide instrument that kind of wraps around you, right? And we want to make sure the listener feels like that drum set is wrapping around them. It's taking up all this space in the stereo spectrum, so we get a really huge drum sound. So the first thing we're going to do is take these toms and pan them to where they actually physically occur on the drum set, so that as we go down the toms, you know, doom, 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 you hear that going around you. The first thing we need to figure out, though, is whether this was recorded drummer's perspective or audience perspective. And what that means was, do we want to pan it like you're sitting at the drum set? So the hi-hat is on your left and the ride cymbal is on your right, and the toms go down around to your right, or vice versa. Do we want to pan this like it's audience perspective, like you're watching the drum set? Now, I happen to know this was recorded audience perspective, so we are going to pan with that in mind. So in that case, if you're looking at a drum set, the player's first tom is going to be on your right, second tom to your left, and the next one further back that way. So let's hear how that lines up with the overheads, just the toms and the overheads. That makes sense to me. And that means we're going to pan our hi-hat pretty far to the right and our ride cymbal pretty far to the left. Now, I'm not going all the way with these because I want to preserve just a little bit of space on the sides for where we're going to put our guitars in just a moment. We'll talk about that in a second. So let's take a listen to what we have so far. All right, I immediately feel like that hi-hat spot mic is overpowering the rest of the kit. That's all I can hear right now. So I'm going to pull that back a bit. And right there, I feel like I've got a good balance. Real quick, I want to play with these snare top and snare bottoms to see which I like the sound of best, and we'll kind of lead with that. Okay, and right there, that ride cymbal came through already, and I can tell it's going to be too much, right? Just like the hi-hat spot mic, I want to pull that down a bit. Let's jump to the chorus so we can hear how the ride cymbal sits in the mix and where we need to place it. I think right there feels pretty appropriate. So it doesn't seem like I've done much yet, right? Just a couple little volume adjustments, some light panning. But let's hear the difference in the sound from before we mixed and after we mixed these drums. So here is before. And after. Listen to how much clearer the whole sound of the drum kit is. You can pick out every piece of the kit clearly. And it's not going to overpower the rest of the mix with that big, ridiculous room sound. All right, let's start bringing in our next instrument, the bass. Now, I'm going to start with the bass right where it is at 0. That's not adding anything or subtracting anything. So 0 is always our starting point. Let's take a listen to how the bass sounds mixed in with the drums. It's a bit loud for me. I'm going to pull it back to, let's say, about -4, -5. And right there feels like a pretty good balance for me. I'm going to jump to the chorus and see how that feels as well. I think it could even come back a bit from there, so I'm going to pull it down a little further to about -6.5. That feels like a much better balance, but we might play with that a bit more as we start introducing other instruments. All right, next up we have these two clean guitar parts. Now, I just about always double track my guitar parts, whether they're clean or distorted or anything, and I'll show you why in just a moment. So here is the sound of our clean guitar. There's our first clean guitar. Here's our second one, which just has a slightly different sound. I used a different pickup for this one. So together, that's going to be our clean guitar sound. But you'll notice if we play them together in the mix right now, it sounds okay, but it's not exciting. It's kind of dull, and it's just sitting right there in the middle. So right away, we're going to pan these left and right. I'm going to say about halfway. and just immediately listen to the width that creates, the huge sound we're getting. Here that is in the mix. I think I even want to go a bit further. I'm going to take it up to, let's say, 50-ish. I'm going to bring them down in volume a little bit as well, so we're not completely blowing away the drums and bass. So here is before we mixed these guitars, just doing some light volume adjusting and panning. Here is the before. And after. See how they add a nice width to the sound of the track, but they're not overpowering the drums or the bass like they were before we brought the volume down and pushed them out to the sides a little bit. Mixing is all about using the space you have the best. You only get so much what they call headroom in a track, or space. And you have to use that space wisely, especially when you have a bunch of tracks like this. Next, we're going to jump to the chorus. And here are our distorted guitars. Let's take a listen to those soloed. So that's this big, gritty guitar sound. Here that is in the mix. And immediately, I want to pan these hard left and hard right, and you'll see the effect that has. That sounds pretty great right off the bat. I am going to cut the volume just a little bit. I'm cutting a little more than I think I should right now because we still have a piano and a lead guitar to add. And I know I'm going to need that space in just a moment. All right, so here is before and after panning and volume adjusting. So again, huge improvement in the sound and the space we're using. All right, let's add our piano next. Now, I remember this piano being way too loud for the track when we listened at the beginning, right? Yeah, so that's completely overpowering those guitars, the drums, just about everything. I'm going to pull it way back, and let's bring it up until we can just hear the attack of each chord. So the piano isn't becoming this, overpowering thing playing throughout the entire piece. Now we just hear the first hit of each chord kind of peeking out from over the guitars, reminding you that the piano's there, filling in the space underneath, but not overpowering anything. Here's what that sounds like going into the chorus. All right, finally we have a lead guitar part, which is just kind of playing this simple high chord lead. And that's just going to add some nice, interesting extra stuff to this chorus. So let's mix that in. Let's see where it is right now at the start. So that's pretty good, but frankly, I hear a couple things fighting with that guitar right now. So what else could be in that space? I hear the cymbals a little bit, kind of occupying the high frequency range, taking over a bit, so I'm going to pull those back a little. There's also the distorted guitars kind of fighting in that range as well, so I'm going to pull them back. All right, I'm feeling pretty good about that. So here's our mix right now. And let's take a listen to the chorus transition. Nice. So I think that sounds pretty well balanced, nice and clear. You can pick out every instrument as you're listening. Let's do a quick compare and contrast before and after we mixed for each of these. Here is the verse before we mixed anything. And after our mixing. And here's the chorus before our mixing. And after. Now, of course, there are so many more things we could do to this track. We haven't even begun to touch on things like EQ or compression, using reverb and more complex routing solutions. So there's a lot of stuff to cover here, and I'm going to cover those in future videos very soon. In the meantime, you can download the audio tracks for this session at my website, longestsoloever.com. I'll put a link down in the description, and I'll give you those for free. So here's my assignment for you. Grab these audio tracks from my website, pull them into your workstation of choice, whether it's Pro Tools, Logic, Cubase, Reaper, anything, and start playing around with the volume levels and the panning. You don't have to mix it the way I did. Use your ears and build the sound you like. If you have an EQ or a compressor, you can start messing around with those too. We'll cover those in a future video soon enough, and you can apply those to these tracks as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe for more videos like this posted every Sunday and live streams every Tuesday. If you have a question about the recording process or musical equipment or anything at all, leave it in the comments below and I'll either get back to you there or cover it in a future video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.